Hello everyone, welcome to Sentinel. Today I want to discuss Bagram Air Force Base because it's kind of popped up in the news and most people are not following it. Evidently last week a U.S. military aircraft, C-17, left LUD Air Base in Qatar and flew through Pakistan and landed in Bagram Air Force Base. Now just before I talk about that, I just want to go back some history of Bagram. Now, if you go back to 2001, when the U.S. invaded Afghanistan, we essentially took over Bagram. I've been there many times, so I know it firsthand. And then we spent billions of dollars building Bagram as a premier air base facility in South Central Asia. Bagram's got two massive runways that can handle heavy aircraft. It's got parking spots for about 100 aircraft. It's got a medical facility for about 50 beds. And warehousing facilities and also munitions facilities. So it's a pretty strategic location. Unfortunately, during our withdrawal, we basically snuck out of Bagram in the middle of night, right before the evacuation started from Kabul International Airport. And as we've discussed in the past, we should have probably kept Bagram as the main airfield for withdrawal of U.S. forces and American personnel. But that didn't happen. And basically turned the power off and left. And the next morning, everybody looked around and the Americans are gone. And then the looting started. And then finally the Afghan National Army went in there and reoccupied the base. And ultimately in August of 2021, it was seized by the Taliban and is currently under Taliban control. So the C-17 that landed at Bagram last week had a delegation of very high-level individuals from the intelligence, military, and administration. So the thinking is that the United States is going to cut a deal with the Taliban to get Bagram back. And President Trump has made mention of that in the past, that he wants Bagram back. Now, this may happen or may not happen. I think there's another reason why this delegation went to Bagram last week. Now, if you remember, Netanyahu from Israel visited with President Trump, just 2 days back. And all the while, the U.S. has been moving forces into the Middle East region. We've moved B-2 bombers. We've moved squadrons of F-35s. We've also moved squadrons of A-10s, and there's a couple of aircraft carriers in the region now. And I'm also sure that submarines are also going into the Persian Gulf with their tactical missile launch capabilities. Now, all this is happening because President Trump said something very interesting in the press briefing with Netanyahu. And he said that the United States is conducting direct negotiations with Iran. So President Trump, he's a master negotiator. He knows how to cut deals. So he may be doing all this to put pressure on Iran to come to the table and make a deal with them. And primarily what the United States wants is they don't want Iran to create a nuclear weapon. Now, Iran may already have a nuclear weapon or they may not. We don't know that. But the point being is Iran is very close to being able to produce a nuclear weapon based on our intelligence analysis. Now, the issue is Iran, from their perspective, sees that Israel has a nuclear arsenal which isn't under international supervision. So Iran and other Middle East regional players are threatened by that. And so consequently, Iran, for its own defense and a balance of power game in the Middle East, wants a nuclear arsenal for themselves. Now, ideally, what we want to see is the Middle East to be a nuclear-free zone. Nobody's got nuclear weapons there, right? So that's one way to achieve peace. And the other way to achieve peace is come to a political settlement between the Palestinians and Israel. Otherwise, this conflict is going to, flare up, year after year, and the United States is continuing to get sucked into it because Israel has this vision of a greater Israel. The Palestinians have a vision of retaining their homeland. So I think President Trump is really trying to make peace in the Middle East. He kind of pushed, in the most recent meeting, he pushed Netanyahu away a little bit, mentioning that he hasn't decided on the tariffs that he's also imposed on Israel. And he'll decide that later on based on reciprocal arrangement. And he also very candidly mentioned that the United States gives Israel $4 billion a year in aid. And that was a shot across the bow of Netanyahu to let him know, that the United States has got equity in this game, and we're going to, decide our own fate in the Middle East, absent of what Israel's interests are. Now, obviously, there's, this conflict is really teetering on a major flare-up in the region because of what's going on in Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, and also that Turkey has become a dominant player, which could suck NATO into the Middle East. Trump is trying to make a deal where all parties concerned, have a positive outcome. Now, not everybody's going to get what they want. Israel is not going to get a greater Israel where they take part of Syria, they take part of Lebanon, they take part of Jordan, and they take part of Saudi Arabia and Egypt. That's not going to happen. That's a non-starter, right? And the Palestinians are, potentially going to get a state that's probably demilitarized, but they can at least govern themselves. But the real issue is this nuclear arsenal that Israel has, and consequently that Iran wants to have as well to have a balance of power. So it's really a game of balance of power. Now, getting back to Bagram, Bagram is a very, very important base, not only because of its geographic location and its infrastructure that we have there, but bear in mind, Bagram is not only, on the backside of Iran, but it's also on the footsteps of China. President Trump made a statement that it's only an hour away from Bagram to the Chinese missile production facilities. So President Trump is really thinking strategically in the matter of how to involve Afghanistan. Now, it's amazing that, we were enemies with the Taliban for the last 20-some years, and now all of a sudden, we may become friends or allies. And this has happened before in history. If you look at what happened with Japan and Germany, we were enemies with them, and they've become some of our greatest allies. So who knows what's going to happen in Afghanistan? The bottom line is this. We need peace in the world. We don't want our son and daughters going to war with Iran for the next X number of years because that's not going to benefit anybody. And we can't just underestimate the capabilities of Iran. You got to remember, with Iraq, they fought for 10 years and lost over 1 million people in that Iran-Iraq war. If we think Afghanistan was tough, I believe that Iran is going to be much tougher. And we certainly want to avoid conflict. We want to focus on bettering the lives of the American people, to better our infrastructure, to better our education, to better our healthcare, and prosper as a nation. And that's what the focus of President Trump needs to remain, rather than focus on what's better for some other foreign country and what their interests are. That doesn't really concern America that much. It doesn't concern the average American, who's trying to put food on the table for their families. And so this is an important development, what President Trump is doing. I wish him success in coming up to some sort of agreement with the Taliban, Afghanistan, with Iran, and the entire region, because the region needs peace, and we got to stop this killing for political or religious ideology. It's stupid. Our sons and daughters deserve a bright future. So let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to hit a like, share, and subscribe. That's all I got. Stay rugged, stay united. Khan out.